Hello and welcome. So today I want to look at something called total ink coverage, or sometimes referred to in relation to paper as total area coverage. So this is basically about if you're going to be using CMYK for printing. So for printing projects like books, print on demand books, for instance, getting your work printed as postcards, you may have to convert your image to CMYK for that, depending on what your printer's specifications are. And there's a few things that you have to be aware of when you're converting your photography into, or when you're getting it printed with this CMYK process, or this process. It just uses the four inks, cyan, magenta, yellow, and K being black. Normally K is black, or it stands for key, but most of the time the key color is black. So I want to talk about total ink. So total ink is the amount of cyan, magenta, yellow and black in the areas of your image. And it's important that when you're getting your images printed with this process, that it doesn't exceed a certain limit. The certain limit is based on, for instance, the printer that you use, or the printer that your printer is using may have a limitation regarding the amount of total ink that should be used with that, or should be within the parts of the image. And also then the paper that you're using may stipulate that. So for instance, very light or thin papers may require a smaller total area coverage is what it's normally referred to as with paper, or sometimes you see it called total ink coverage. So easy acronyms to remember, so TIC and TAC, so it's just tic-tac, the two acronyms that are generally used with this within the printing terminology. So in this image, what we want to do is we want to check the areas of the image where there might be an ink coverage higher than a certain amount. So for this one, we're going to say the total ink coverage should be below 260%. So that's the total amount of cyan, magenta and yellow should be below this 260%. Normally, you should check with your printer and the paper specifications that you're going to be using and that your printer is going to be using. But normally speaking, general rule of thumb is that it's around 300% that it should be below. But for this one, we're going to say 260, just to kind of have a go through and see how you, if you have an issue with your image and it's above that, how do you get it down? So let's start. So up here, I'm just going to, switch this back, because by default this shows us the CMYK numbers. So when I put my mouse over this image, you see up in the top right hand corner, you see the CMYK values, and normally the CMYK values will be highest in the darkest areas of the image. So we're going to check down here in the shadows. Of course, it's very difficult for me to tell from looking at this and adding up those percentages what that is. So the best thing you can do here is you can go to your little eyedropper tool, and you have an option here for total ink, which will add the CMYK values up for you. And then when you mouse over the darker areas, you'll see that we have some areas of this image are over 260. So what are we going to do to reduce them? So there's a number of different ways that you can do this. And if you look online at other tutorials, they may recommend other ways of doing it. The easiest way I find doing it involves converting the image to a CMYK color space. And of course that can be quite a good exercise in terms of preparing the image for that print process, because normally if you convert to a CMYK color space, then at least you're going to get an idea of how your colors are going to shift when they move into that print space. Now, for inkjet printing, you don't need to do this. With inkjet printing has, normal inkjet printers have an expanded range because they use extra inks, so they can handle the RGB color space. But for process printing, so like offset or print on demand, they normally only use 4 inks. So the color space or the color gamut of those machines is normally much smaller than even our sRGB color profiles. So let's have a look at this. So we see up at the top here that we have this image is currently in RGB color space, and it's a 16-bit image. So first thing I want to do is I want to just go to my mode and change it down to 8-bit, and then I'm going to go to, let's check, I'm going to check what my current profile is. So if I go to edit and convert the profile, you can see the current profile of this image is Adobe RGB 1998. So that's a much bigger color space than our CMYK one, but I'm not going to convert through this process. I'm going to create a custom CMYK profile, and within that custom CMYK profile we can reduce the total ink if it exceeds a certain value. So we're going to look at how to do that. So first of all, I want to maybe put a little eyedropper, so I'm going to select the eyedropper tool from here, and I'm going to come down to the darkest part of the image. So I've got this here, and I'm going to do shift click with the eyedropper tool, and now I've got a little point marked here. By default it's defaulting to RGB because that's the color space we're working in, but I'm going to change that to total ink. Okay, so now I have my total ink. I see it's over 288, so I can keep an eye on this area then when I'm doing my conversion. So in order to do the conversion, if you want to set up a profile to have access to again and again, you can do this. You can create this custom profile through the color settings. I'm just going to do it through convert to profile and create it once off for this process. So in order to do that, I'm going to CMYK here, and I'm going to click this custom CMYK. Okay, so from here I'm going to just change this to the Euro standard and leave it as coated. I'm going to use this separation type GCR. It normally gives us a better result. You can see here the total ink limit is defaulted to 300. I'm just going to change it to 260. So we're pretending for this process that we need an image with a total ink limit no more than 260% in the darkest parts of the image. Of course, the lighter parts will be using less ink, so they won't exceed that amount. So if you want to, you can go ahead and you can put a kind of a custom name here, so we know what it's for, and we can leave the other settings as is. And then I'm just going to click on OK, and it won't convert it yet. We'll just see a preview of how it will look like once it's converted. So I'm going to click on OK, and then I can check and uncheck the preview to see how it's looking. And you can see it's getting a little bit lighter. Not much, because the total ink limit isn't too much over 260%, but it is getting a little bit, there is a slight color shift because the amount of ink in the corner is being reduced. So we just scroll over here and we have a look close up, and we again do the preview, so you can see a slight color shift, very minor color shift there. So this is also of course a good exercise in terms of understanding how the image will appear then when it runs through the CMYK process. And normally what happens is that in order to reduce the total ink coverage, it will, and to maintain the brightness or darkness of the image, or the contrast, it will reduce the CMY values, and it will add in a little bit of black. So that kind of neutralizes your shadows essentially. It makes your shadows look much more neutral and less saturated in terms of color. And you can see that's what's happening here. It's shifting from the kind of yellow green in the shadows to a more kind of neutral green in order to pull the total ink coverage below 260%. So I'm going to click on OK, and then it will convert this to the CMYK profile, and it will reduce the total ink coverage here to, as you can see, it's reducing it to 247%. So we're well under now. If we check these darkest parts of the image here in the top right hand corner, we can see that we're well below our 260% 8% for total ink coverage. So that's it. So that's how you reduce the total ink coverage for your digital files if you're printing with offset or print on demand. Of course, if your image is darker, you may see greater color shifts, or you may see your shadows getting lighter or more neutral. Just to be aware of, this image was not as problematic as other images might be, especially darker images. So it will always depend, remember, on the type of image you're applying this adjustment to. So now you can see from the top here, we're in the CMYK 8-bit image. You can go ahead and save the file then as a TIFF or a JPEG, and then go ahead and use it, import it into InDesign or whatever you're using as a or just save it as a TIFF file. Normally printers want images like this, of course, in some type of PDF format, so it might be an idea to convert it to a PDF also before you send it to your printer, rather than having them to do it, because even when they do it, again, there may be further kind of color changes if they open it up in some software and then convert it to a PDF file for you. So it's good to do this all before sending it to the printer. Okay, so thank you for watching.